Tom Paterson is with us tonight. He's been with us a number of times over the years. He always is entertaining. He's prolific in the sense of he's got, I think last time he said he had 39 books, but it's in that neighborhood.
I'm pushing 41 at this point.
Pushing 41, he says, okay. But we're really interested to see Tom's book on Nanaimo that turned up here in the late 25. And he's going to talk a little bit about that and about his plans for a more comprehensive study of the coal mining industry. So Tom, welcome.
You know, there was a time in my life I could not have stood here in front of you with a gun up my butt. No, seriously. It took me a long time to achieve some form of confidence. And the secret I found was not, as you may have read in books, picturing your audience naked. No, the secret I found to addressing an audience was to know what I was talking about. In other words, I'm confident because I believe in what I have to present to you tonight. But it took me a lot of trial and error to get to that point. Anyway, as Gord just mentioned, yes, I have this is my current newest book. Okay, this is a flagrant advertisement. I'm sorry, there you have it. Unknown Nanaimo, history you never learned in school. So, but there's a purpose for using it. I want it as an entry to where I am going to go tonight. But first things first, I would like to ask, besides Tom Tier, how many of you here tonight are native Nanaimo people?
Wow.
I'm surprised, quite frankly. I had bet Belinda 2. So many people of today's Nanaimo are from elsewhere. You must realize that yourself.
How about Victoria Island?
Well, I'm from away too, Saanich. So there's a purpose to this. I started out to write in my teens, okay? And I was already in love with British Columbia history. So instead of writing the great Canadian novel, I chose to write about true nonfiction Canadian British Columbia history. And I lived in Saanich, Victoria at the time. So the closest, as much as I knew about Nanaimo until my 20s, was driving through it on my way to Parksville and coming back. So when I started writing a historical column in the Cowichan Valley Citizen, which was on the Cowichan Valley, obviously. It was immensely popular. Right from the beginning, it really took off. The Nanaimo paper of the day was struggling. The Nanaimo Free Press turned out to be mortally wounded, but management was still trying to resurrect it. And they saw how popular history was proving for me in the Cowichan Valley. I had an invitation from Peter Godfrey, who was the managing editor of the Nanaimo paper. Now, any of you remember the TV show Mary Tyler Moore?
Yes.
And Lou Grant, the managing editor? Well, picture Lou Grant after a hurricane, and you had Peter Godfrey. He was a mess, but not up here. And I learned later that he was almost legendary in the news game. He was that good. Anyway, he invited me to write a historic weekly, twice weekly at the beginning, but weekly column on Nanaimo history. Oh, well, Where to begin? I came up to the library, I hit the microfilm machine, and I went back into the Nanaimo Free Press to the very beginning. And then I was blessed by the fact that a friend of mine wanted something to do in her retired time, and she volunteered to come weekly to Nanaimo and do it for me. And so I printed, effectively photocopied the Nanaimo Free Press from the first issue up until about 1905. Not the advertising pages or things like that, but the news pages. And talk about enlightening. It was fascinating, which I took for granted. You should understand that when I agreed to write about Nanaimo without knowing a damn thing about it, I knew that the information had to be there. And the newspapers was the most logical point, because I don't write textbooks. I see my role as a writer of trying to catch your interest. You may not like history, but you let me get at you with a few of my columns and I'll change your mind, I promise you. That's not saying that I'm a great writer, it's saying that the subject is that fascinating. But you have to dig it out. So I start writing the column, about 3 months, and it's being well received. But I get a phone call from Peter Godfrey, asked me to drop in. So I drive up to Nanaimo, and takes me in his office, and he asks me, "Why the hell aren't you writing about the coal mines?" And I said, well, it struck me that all the people who live in Nanaimo probably already know about the coal minings. I'm trying to offer them something that, for sure, that they know nothing about. And he says, well, I don't know anything about the coal mines. And I was ordered to begin as of that point. Well, that suited me to a T. I mean, what the heck? For a whole number of reasons. My maternal grandfather went down into the mines of the Oak Country at the age of 10. The irony was, he survived and then was gassed twice in the First World War and was sick from that day forth, but he wasn't gassed in a coal mine. But I inherited his safety lamp. I also inherited a pool cue from some champion minor pool player in Nanaimo, but I'm a kid, right? You know what happened to that. I don't. It disappeared. And the little coffee pot style headlamp. But I still have his safety lamp. And that was the beginning of my interest in coal mining. And I can only guess 8 or 9 perhaps years old. So planted a seed. This is before I'm a writer or anything like that. But back to Nanaimo. I've begun writing the column weekly in the Nanaimo paper, and it's extremely popular because of the subject matter. Do any of you recognize the name John Cass?
Oh, yes.
Okay. John was ahead of me by 20 years perhaps. And he had a knack for unearthing family photos. I guess people, once he started to they started publishing them in the paper, people would seek him out and say, oh, by the way, John, I have this wonderful photo of such and such and such and such. So I would bet you that half the great photos in the Nanaimo archives came somehow or other through John Cass. Now, if any of you ever met John Cass, you would know that this man was a walking encyclopedia. I don't work that way. I like a Rolodex. You ask me something, I know where to look it up. But don't think that I carry it up here. But John did. He and I would have lunch down on Commercial Street, a restaurant in Commercial Street. And he would then, through the course of the lunch, on the way back to the vehicle, my driving him home, he was like a machine gun. That guy could talk like this. But every word he said was history. God, that man, if only somebody could have nailed him down with a tape recorder. And perhaps maybe somebody even tried, but I'm not aware of it. I'm just saying that he was a joy, but he left me breathless. I mean, there's no way I could even take notes from a guy like that. So, how many of you have visited the virtual coal mine in the Nanaimo Museum? Oh, excellent. Wow. And you'll know that it's actually pretty good, isn't it?
Yeah.
And not only that, I really love watching children going through it, because they give them the kerosene lantern sort of thing. What a way to try to ignite interest in history at an early age. You know, I was in grade 8 before I encountered Canadian history. Grade 8. I've been trying to repair that ever since. How many of you seen the signboard for the #1 mine on Milton Street? Not that many, actually. We Canadians don't seem to like to honor our past. That's my belief after almost a lifetime of researching and writing history. We just don't seem to cherish the memories and recognize the achievements of the people who built this country that we live in and take for granted today. And we do take it for granted. I too. But what I mean is, if you were to stop and think for 1 minute, how did we actually get here? It will set your mind reeling, because in those days, sacrifice, hardship, that was the norm. Not the unusual, not out of the ordinary. That was it for most people. And perhaps that's why I can identify with a coal miner as much as a logger or a fisherman or whoever from the past. Our mines were notoriously dangerous. That was known. It was accepted, taken for granted. A cost of doing business, a risk you took to make a paycheck. And not an outrageously good paycheck either, when you think about it. But many of these men, and they were all men, ladies, you realize that that was the case in those days. They came from other countries. They came with limited education, quite often with English as a second language. Just makes it all the more challenging, doesn't it? It took courage to try to start a life in a new country. But they weren't necessarily welcomed. If you had a visible accent, if you were a member of a visible minority, you were second class, and even worse. Do you know, this afternoon, Belinda and I went to a dedication of the Hillcrest Chinese Cemetery. Up until about 5 years ago, you couldn't see it for the broom bush. It was so neglected and overgrown. Nobody gave a damn. But a man by the name of Neil Durham got a few friends together and began hacking away the bushes and so forth. And today it's all cleaned up. The graves are polished. It looks great. And the CBRD is accepting it as a historic place. But it took till 2026. The Chinese people were abused, but that's another story in itself. So I am writing a column for the Nanaimo paper, and of course I'm writing about everything and the coal mines. Okay, and you know, for 20 years when I was writing, I didn't realize that I was writing about people. I was writing about events, wasn't I? I grew up on American comic books, American magazines, American television, American movies. So it was cowboys and Indians for me. I wear a cowboy hat, what the hell? So my point being that that's where it was in my generation. We Canadians knew more about American history than we knew about any of our own. I was in my teens before I discovered British Columbia history. And who did I have to thank? An American TV program. It talked about a lost mine, not down in Nevada or Arizona or a shipwreck off Florida. It talked about a lost mine behind New Westminster, the Lost Pit Mine, and that was it. I beetled down on my bike to the provincial archives of the day and walked in, and there were several ladies on duty, and I said, hi, do you have anything about lost treasures? And the lady says, yes, right over here. And she takes me to the file, pulls it out, and there's a vertical, what they call vertical files on lost treasures, just like that. Wow. But British Columbia lost treasures. What a difference. So I'm working my way towards the coal mines and with real purpose here. About I can't remember the year, I bought one of the first privately owned metal detectors. This is an assumption on my part, but I'm pretty sure. The only metal detector I had seen outside of magazine ads were by the municipality of Saanich for finding water pipes. And they were two men with two detectors, and they'd walk with the field, electronic magnet, whatever it is between them, and it would pick up the water pipes. But I had seen the ads for Bounty Hunter and White Electronics and things like that in these American magazines. So I sent away for one. And it came through customs, and they passed it without an argument, which surprised me. And it was made of plywood and plastic. The box, and that was plywood. I had my doubts, but damn, it worked. And I've owned half a dozen metal detectors since then, and I've been scratching out there ever since. And that is a joy unto itself. Hard on your arms and your back, but it really is a treasure hunt, guys. You have no idea what you can turn up. No, I haven't found $20 gold pieces, but I've found the equal 200 times. I'm talking minor tags. To me, those are a $20 gold piece. I have two in my pocket tonight, and gentlemen down here brought some to show me. A miner's tag, picture a loonie with a hole in it and a big number stamped in the middle. That was a man. We'll never know who the heck he was, but that was a man, and he had a family. But the storyline has been lost. To my knowledge, the only record existing that contains, attaches miners to their tags is a single ledger in the Ladysmith archives. Came from the Ray Knight collection, and it covers a 2-year period. But if you go through it, you can match a man to his tag, but only for that time. You realize if the mine was open 35 years, there would have been an awful lot of guys who had number 37. So, but at least for 1-2 year period, you could identify that man. And that's why, to me, that is a $20 gold piece. I place more value on them than anything I've ever found or seen anybody else find out there in the bush. So I've been scratching around the coal mine sites. And I still hadn't conceived the idea of writing a book at that time. I'm doing this for the treasure hunting aspect, bottle collector. Started bottle collecting way back with Chinatown, Cumberland, Chinatown. I'm sure you all have heard of that place. And boy, that was a gold rush. First time I went there, I saw the license plates, Vermont. Eastern American states, because they knew about it before we did, didn't they? I was in and out of the archives in Victoria. I tried to talk the staff into getting up there. I said, you've got to go. These guys are unearthing unbelievable treasures. You've got to get some for the museums, for the archives. And the response was something like, on a weekend? On our own time? Our gas? What are you smoking? So suffice to say, they didn't go. And this stuff, I bet you, the bulk of it went across the line. But that's the Canadian way. That's what I have witnessed for my entire writing career. We Canadians just don't seem to really appreciate our past. We should revel in it. But, okay. One promise I had made to myself, I should explain, I have splunked. You know what splunking is? Caving. Okay, I did that for numerous years. Got down and dirty, got injured and all that sort of good stuff. Got trapped once. So, yeah, but that's as close as I came to mining, all right? But I have explored abandoned hard rock mines. You know, a copper mine is drilled into hard, solid rock. If it's been there 100 years, it's probably still pretty safe, except for two unforeseens for the innocent. If you see water on the floor, don't take it for granted that that water is only a few inches deep. You could hit a shaft. But the real danger is lack of oxygen. 2 breaths, you're unconscious, you're dead. Just like that. But I didn't know that at the time. So we found we had word came to us that loggers in the Nanaimo Lakes area had exposed the air shaft to the number 2 extension mine. We were up there the next weekend. And sure enough, here's this concrete frame. So picture a big well. Iron steps going down, disappearing. Toppled over had been the fan with the blades and so forth, all metal, but the wooden part had burned away in some fire some years before. So that's how the loggers knew it to be a fan shaft. Anyway, the word came to us, and we get there, and I had to explore that thing. I'm sorry, I know my own promise to myself, but I had companions. We had ropes for lifeline, so I went down 48 steps, and they were about 16 inches apart, so you can do the math, if you will. And then there was about an 8-foot drop at the bottom. And when I got there, to my disappointment, it only went maybe 30 feet and was tumbled. But I realize now that did me a favor, didn't it? I knew I couldn't proceed, and therefore I didn't try, because we did have a real tragedy here in Nanaimo, 1978. 2 young boys, brothers, got lost in the furnace portal mine. You know where the animal shelter is on the South Forks Road or out that area? Well, if you go straight up the hill, you come to it today, and it blends You just see this green moss. It looks like smooth rock face, but no, it's concrete. By the time they were found, they were skeletons. Anyway, I spoke to the man whose job it was to seal the mine off. And so he's a professional masonry guy, right? So the Mounties hired him to seal off this mine entrance. And he gets his crew and his equipment up there, and they get it all ready. But his orders are, do not proceed. You put it on hold for 24 hours. Why do you suppose? In case somebody was in there. Because then it was his job to seal it. And now the moss covers it. And if you don't know where to look, you'd walk right past it. But that's where those two boys died. And I think of them from time to time. It's so obvious, the natural fascination of a child, right? To explore. I did it when I was a kid, up on Mount Sickard, on Mount Douglas. They had a copper mine. Every kid did it. It was a rite of passage, right? But who knew about dead air pockets and sinks? And in the case of the boys, they got lost. You know, the joke was, the boys who found them had gone in and laid out string behind them to find their way out. Tragedy, eh? Okay. Some of you are going to say to yourselves, I'm sure, that the coal mines of this area, I'm going to use the greater Nanaimo area, okay? That starts from Granby to Diver Lake to East Wellington, Protection Island. Do you follow all that? That's only about 50 square miles, but been a lot of mining, a lot of coal mining in that small area. So I've written many a column, newspaper column, and now in the book on people who built Nanaimo in the good old days, the so-called good old days. But trust me, not many of you would trade to go back to the good old days. Not many of you ladies would like to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning, break the ice on the water bucket, take a stroll, come back and struggle to kindle the fire, to cook breakfast, right? So today you get up, you're warm from central heating, you put your slippers on, you flick the light switch, you go in the washroom, you flush the toilet, you plug the kettle in, right? But that wasn't the way it was in the good old days. So just think about that sometimes. And I'm not talking like 100 years ago. I'm talking like 2 generations ago. When I was a child, and for living in Parksville, we had outdoor plumbing, a pump in the kitchen, wood fire. I mean, it's not that long ago. So, I have entertained people with the stories I tell here, okay? But that's not where I am anymore. I haven't been there for years. I am so devoted to the coal mining history. Now, some of you are probably going to say that it's been done. I'm the first to acknowledge Lynn Bowen's 2 books, and there have been other books as well, okay? But mine's different. I come at it, I get down and dirty. I'll take you to the mine, assuming something's still there. I mean, it hasn't been paved over or destroyed by progress, or it's in somebody's front yard. I'll take you there, and I'll even tell you what's in the ground, because I've scratched. And so I take you back in time to the start of the mine, the story of how the mine worked, which is something nobody's done before either. And then I tell you the stories of the people. And I'm going to give you a perfect example. I took Belinda last year to the PCC mine in South Wellington. South Wellington Village, do you have a general idea where it is? Morden Road, anybody generally familiar with this? Okay. You go to the village, you drop down the hill, across the railway tracks, down the hill, Brothers Road, you park your car, you climb up onto the NN railway tracks, and you walk maybe 10 minutes north towards Nanaimo. And you come to a farmer's field. On your right is a grassy slope with a signs marking pipeline, gas line. But on your left is a farmer's field. And if you look, it no longer used, you can see the broom and that are starting to grow up. But you look down and you see some trees, and you look again and you say, that looks like concrete. And it is. This is from the Pacific Coast Coal Mine. Pacific Coast Collieries, also once known as South Wellington Collieries. So, you can stand there today, because it has not been developed in any way, shape, or form. It's actually now a regional park, by the way. The trail, the hiking trail cuts right through the town site and right past some of the ruins, such as they are. And there aren't many. Some concrete foundations from the powerhouse, stuff like that. But my point is that if you stand in the field and you look back to the railway tracks, because the mine was a slope. A slope is a surface mine, a lateral mine as opposed to a shaft, okay? So the mine went under the railway tracks, heading sort of northeasterly. In February 1915, the men in the PCC mine were on the morning shift, as per usual, and it was a terrible accident. Now I should explain, immediately north of the PCC mine were the abandoned Southfield mines, and they're flooded. Immediately south of the PC mine is the Alexandra mine, and it's flooded. But not to worry, because they have plans, they have charts telling them where they could go and be safe from either mine. It turned out they were working from charts from a different legend. Instead of 133 feet, theirs were 100 feet. Pardon me, the other way around. Theirs showed that they have 133 feet for every 100 feet, okay? Add that up. It turned out they thought that they were 400 feet from the flooded Southfield. And on that morning in February, David Nellis, the fire boss, set the charge. He blew a hole into the Southfield mine. They were right next door. Within 10, 12 minutes, 19 men had drowned. Belinda and I stopped at your cemetery here this afternoon to check out Joseph Foy's headstone, which had been defaced in recent years, and I wanted to see if it had been repaired. And I'm happy to say it has been. Joseph Foy was the manager of the mine. When he heard that there had been the blowout down below, he went down to see what he could do and became one of the victims. But this is what the point I'm trying to make, and this is the atmosphere I try to set in my book. You're standing in this cow pasture, and 110 years ago, women, children were standing there in the rain, in silence, praying for a miracle. And today, it's just a cow pasture. Nothing in any way, shape, or form to indicate the drama that occurred there in 1915. And that's just true all the way down the line. The Milton Street signboard, for God's sake, is for the second worst coal mining disaster in Canadian history. You know, most people recognize the name Spring Hill, but never heard of the number one Esplanade. Haven't heard of Hillcrest, which was the second, the worst disaster. By that I mean fatality-wise, okay? So that was right here in downtown Nanaimo. You go there today and it's a rail yard. If private individuals hadn't put up that sign, there would be nothing to show for the number one mine or for those men. Okay, you go to the museum and they have their virtual mine display, but okay, it's just not enough for me. Fair enough?
Yeah.
That just doesn't work for me. I believe we owe them more than that. And the reason is, those are the people who built the lives, this country, and that we enjoy the benefits of, okay? We're the inheritors. Don't we owe them at least remembrance?
Yes.
And we just don't seem to do a very good job of that. And I'm hoping to correct that with my book. And I'm not here trying to give you a sales pitch on a book that hasn't gone to press, but probably is within the month is to go to press. I should explain it's going to be 4 volumes, by the way.
Whoa.
So if you think that you've read about the coal mining here in the Nanaimo area before, not a chance. I was amazed myself once I really got into it. I started out thinking that 5 men had died at Granby. Try 17. They're buried in the records. Well, you might find the odd newspaper reference to them, but they're there. They were recorded, but you have to ferret them out. So that's the job I've set for myself, okay? When I finish those 4 volumes, I will have told the story of the greater Nanaimo coal mining history. Something that I believe in so passionately. And it has to be, somebody has to do it, okay? Mining, so many people today don't realize that coal mining, I'm talking Vancouver Island, not British Columbia as a whole, was the number 1 employer before forestry. Fisheries made money, yes, forestry too, but the coal mine were the breadbasket. 9 communities on Vancouver Island were founded on coal mining. But show me the signage that tells you that. Show me the monuments. They just, back to us being Canadians. Remember the tea commercial from 100 years ago? Only in Canada, you say. Well, unfortunately, only in Canada. The other countries seem to place a higher value on their past. And I see it as my job to try to correct that within my own limitations, obviously. I'm one person, I'm one writer, I'm one researcher. And there are other excellent writers and researchers out there, but none of them has set the coal mining as the real centerpiece. I've had to ask myself many times, like, what brings me to this particular subject? I mean, sure, maybe it fascinates the hell out of me and bores you to death. And that, of course, that's human nature. But think about the drama. You know when a kid says to me from time to time, "Oh man, history, boring," and I say to him, "Hang on, you like war stories? Yeah. Cops and robbers? Yeah. Sex? Yeah. Well, son, history. History's the most fascinating damn subject in the world because it's about people. There's nothing you can imagine in your own imagination that hasn't been done before and better by others. Am I getting the signal? I told Belinda to give me the high sign.
Go ahead.
So, I'm inviting you to follow me to the coal mines. That there is stuff to be seen out there if you're willing to take a little hike. As I said to you, the PCC mine, as pure luck has it, is a regional park. And there's a very popular hiking trail, walks right over the thing. But of course, nobody knows that because there's nothing to even suggest it to them. They see, some granite ware, some old wash pans and broken glass, and they figure, somebody must have lived here. Yeah, there was a little town site there. But it's all gone, of course. And this is true of everywhere I've scratched, that things disappear, are allowed to disappear, are encouraged to disappear. Do you know insurance companies today will have something torn down rather than stand vacant because it invites occupation from undesirables and so forth. The first thing they do if they're tearing down a home here in Nanaimo, the very first thing they do, put up a fence. There was a time I and there's a few others here tonight used to scratch the walls. Well, you're not welcome anymore. So, but the point of what I'm trying to say is that when you scratch in the ground, you'd be amazed sometimes at the things you find that tell you about the people that lived there way back when, of whom there's not a sign that they ever were there other than the rubble in the ground. I have unearthed very expensive liquor bottles, by which I mean the liquor that was within them had been very expensive at one time, from a coal miner. He obviously had good taste, because he obviously had to pay extra, didn't he? And that's rare. Most of you find, more common. But there's one logging community that I've scratched to give you a perfect example. You walk up what is now the Trans-Canada Trail. On your left was the camp, but the camp was also on your right. So how do you know where your way around? Well, it's simple. On the left, you get baby bottles and women's creams. That was the family quarters. On the right, booze and bacca. Hundreds of tobacco tins, the little flat ones they could carry like a flask in your pocket, and booze bottles. So that was a learning experience in itself. So I've had a lot of fun digging, literally digging for history. And this is available to you people too, As I said, you have sites right here in this valley. There's a gentleman in our audience tonight who's got one of the best private collections, and some of it's from his own efforts with a metal detector and a rake. And don't ever accuse me, or those like me, of being Indiana Jones. If you think I'm looting, excuse me. Something that's been in the ground for 100 years, that's been run over with a bulldozer, set fire to, and I'm abusing it. As as opposed to the people when I suggested that they go from the museum up there and save something before it was too late, but wouldn't give up their weekend? No, it's us Indiana Joneses who actually get off our backsides and do it. And you could argue, yes, but it goes into private collections. And there is an argument can be made for that. By the same token, this stuff probably would have been lost altogether. And quite often, private collections find their way into into museums. So I choose to look upon it as a form of rescue. Okay, and I've reached the stage in life where I have to think beyond my own lifetime, and I have a library that's bigger than most municipal libraries. I have 17 file cabinets. I have computer CDs and flash drives and disk. I'm a one-man archive. It's built on a lifetime since I was 14, nonstop from the age of 14. So, but now I have to think beyond me. So I'm dedicating it to what I hope are the right repositories. But you know the joke? Some won't take them. I won't mention the name, but here in this community is an agency that before they would even consider accepting it, I would have to put money for it to be accessioned. Like I'm to pay them to take it for posterity. Go figure. So I found somewhere else. But you people tonight, I really admire you. I respect and I admire anybody who gives a goddamn about our history. The sad thing is, obviously, you're from very few middle-aged, mostly older. I go to Remembrance Day now, and in Duncan, it gets a larger crowd every year. But where are the kids? I go through the crowd, I'm looking for the kids, and I don't see them. What the hell happened? I think there's been a disconnect since the 1960s. That we don't teach it in school, we don't encourage it. And so if you get the kid that says, boring, whose fault is that? His or the school system? I've been invited on occasion to do a sort of, to speak to, grades 5, 7, how old was that victim? 12, 13? Anyway, I have the meeting out of my hand from the moment I get there because I take a show and tell. And these kids just turn on unbelievably. The first time it happened, I was astounded. I was astounded the second and the third time, but what I mean is the first time just blew me away. These kids are hungry for this sort of thing, but it's the way it's fed to them, or not fed at all.
Right.
So you people are doing your part at the Nanaimo Historical Society to try to keep history alive. But by keeping it alive, I mean passing it on. What's the bloody point if each and every one of us takes it with us? Is that the end? Well, if it is, that would be a major tragedy in my mind. You want to leave something that ignites imaginations. What do you call it? Genealogy today is major, isn't it? Well, that's great. If even one member of a family will take it upon him or herself to become the family historian and start collecting and and creating scrapbooks or whatever, however they do it. Today it would be digital, I'm sure. But you get my point, that they're doing it to pass the story along, to keep it alive. Because people who know anything about the past have a better understanding of who and where they are in their own lives. And they have a better appreciation of the life that they have. We in Canada are, you can't deny, we're spoiled. Yes, we have our faults, all right? But how many of you would trade living Canada for living elsewhere? And think about it. There's probably 4 billion people on this planet who would trade with you in a second. So don't ever think that what we have isn't worth having, but in order to have it, we should at least show some appreciation for it. Honor it. I'm the first of 3 generations of my family who didn't go to war. I owe. That's my attitude to history. And I ask you to do that, to encourage younger people, to encourage to spread the word. History is fun. It's a blast. So I'm nowhere. I had a plan when I came here tonight, but I sort of wandered. So I'm sorry.
Well,
I have chosen coal mining as my way of addressing history and leaving a niche, attacking a niche, if you will. Okay, so I'm just encouraging you when you come to this society, when you participate in various events, encourage. You have a city council, you have regional boards. You know that it took 30 years to fix Morden. It's a provincial historic park, and it was falling down. They wouldn't put a dime into it. 30 damn years of neglect. But they finally got to it, but of course, for that time, a lot of the damage is done. So a lot of what you see there today, I'm sorry, is cosmetic. Because there was more to it years ago, but it's fallen down or had to be removed because it was endangering a high beam had to be removed because it was endangering a beam down below. Well, that's a hell of a way to treat history, don't you think? I think that's a hell of a way to treat history. But yes, we saved the Kinsel Trestle in the Cowichan Valley. You have no idea what a fight that was. They wanted to tear it down and build what we called the stick bridge. By that I meant it would have been built with 3 timbers for every 5 of the original. In other words, it would have looked, as a friend of mine who's in construction said to me, it's going to look like a scaffold. It would have been that skinny. They had to fight for that. But ultimately we won. So it can be done, folks. If you see something that you believe strongly enough, try to, make noise. Get your friends together. I'm sure the society takes on certain projects or.
we'd like to. Anyway, can we
Yeah.
have you pause here for a minute and ask if there's comments or?
Oh yeah, by all
questions?
means.
Anybody? David?
Tom, you have a book with you.
Pardon me?
You have a book with you brought.
Yeah, well, this is the current one. On Nanaimo. History that you will never learn in school. I told you that rather than being totally commercial, I was using it as a launch pad by telling you why I knew no more about Nanaimo than some people who have come from afar. But I've learned a lot since then. Boy, I've learned a lot. I love Nanaimo, except it's so spread out now. My God.
Anybody else?
Out of all the books you've written, where would you, like I've never written any of your books, what one would you promote?
Sorry?
Because I've never read any of your books, and I was wondering, starting to read your books, which one would you suggest that I start reading?
Well, since you're a member of the Nanaimo Historical Society, logically, the book on Nanaimo, wouldn't you think?
Okay, they're not all on Nanaimo.
No, seriously.
I thought they were all on.
Oh, no, hell, 39 books on Nanaimo, come on.
I was wondering about that, that's why I was asking.
Said
but
you knew a lot.
I'm prolific, but God.
Tom is prolific. He is prolific.
Anyway, sorry about that.
And just to this woman's point here, Tom, I want to make note that if everybody enjoyed what they saw, what they heard of Tom today, I want to urge you to check out his newsletter. I get his newsletter every Thursday.
Me too.
And it's fantastic. So I urge you to do that.
It's the best, this still improves my argument. It'll cost you 46 cents a week. And I've had people who followed my column in the Citizen, where it was free, were avid readers of my column. But when I launched my own website and charging you 46 cents a week, nope.
Yeah.
So, I love history, okay? And I will go to my last moment trying to share it with people. It astounds me that there's no bottom to this well. I liken historical research to digging a hole. The more you dig, the bigger it gets. It doesn't close in and end, it grows on you. Unbelievable. And so if any of you have not done any research, try the microfilm in the library. Hard on the eyes, be warned, it's really hard on the eyesight. But you will be astonished at the stories that you read in the papers of old. And there's not a human emotion that hasn't played out in some way, shape, or form in Nanaimo over the years. And the beauty of the newspapers of the day was the way they recorded it. They would give a trial, for example, and give the testimony verbatim. You get it today, and you get snaps, right? So you actually can see. You don't have to read between the lines. It's there for you. I love history, newspapers. One tragedy, however, anybody who's ever looked at microfilm, originally newspapers were kept, one copy was kept in the office, and at the end of the month it would be bound. So, but these would fill rooms, okay? And for the provincial archives in Victoria, my God, they needed a warehouse. These things, and they weigh a lot, okay? So when the microfilm thing came out in the, I'm going to guess late 70s.
Yeah.
No?
Early 50s.
Early 50s? Well, I'm talking here, where I began to encounter it. Okay, but good point. They would open up the bound volume and photograph it. And that became not a negative, but a positive, that they would, on a reel of film, and you turn the crank or you push the button and it comes up on a screen. But the company that did this, if you've ever seen some of the microfilm, they must have taken the bound volume like this, stood it by the window, and taken the photograph. You get shadow covering half this page. Then they would reverse and they'd take this page, and you get shadow. In the Nanaimo Free Press in the 1890s, there was a murder of a particular interest to me. I really, really wanted to know the story of it, and you can't read it. It's in the paper. I defy anybody in this room to read it because it's just pure black. It was so poorly done. And that I've encountered time and again. So my point is, we have lost a lot of our newspaper reportage through the crappy company that did the microfilming by photographing them for microfilm. So you'll time and again encounter patches or periods in your newspaper where it's just hopeless, bloody hopeless.
I really enjoyed your talk.
Yeah.
My name's Bill Maynard.
Yeah.
My family's been in Nanaimo since 1896. My father and his brother worked in number one mine in 1900. Anyway, I have some very good information. I'd like to get together with you and share
Yes.
some of the stuff that I got. I'm a very good friend of Tommy Tears.
Who's here today? Who's with us tonight?
Hey, Bill, how are you?
Yeah. Anyway, I'd like that.
Thank you.
And I'll give you a contact.
Okay.
Yeah, I hope you're on email.
I got an email.
Excellent.
All right, is there anybody else?
Yeah, I'll ask a question. Hey, Tom, I just
That's
want
enough.
to.
You've had enough, eh, Darrell?
Yeah. Yeah, I just want to address the microfilm issue. Is that there's a company called newspapers.com, and what they're doing is they're redigitizing all these old copies, so there's hope to see them again. Yeah,
Actually,
legibly.
what they're doing is they're converting the microfilm into digital.
Oh,
So the
that
problems
will
that
help
are
then.
on microfilm are going to be,
Because here's the kicker. Small museums and that, when they were offered microfilm that they could put into a cabinet, the whole history of the town in a cabinet versus a room full of bound volumes, they got rid of the bound volumes.
yeah.
I could buy them at the flea market, or they went into the landfill, or they went to recycling. They're gone. So,
Well, I think we ran into that. You wanted me to look up something from the 50s at Malaspina. Yeah, I think it was regarding Mount Benson. But anyhow, yeah, that was all washed out, as you remember. It wasn't black, it wasn't shaded, it was just obliterated.
Right, okay, we'll stop
Yeah.
here. Thank you very much, Tom. You started out talking about looking for treasures.
oh yeah.
We've had a treasure here tonight, and I really appreciate you coming by.
Thank you. Oh, okay.